So Mitt Romney and Mitch McConnell and a bunch of conservative Republicans went on the Sunday shows to talk about Biden's withdrawal from Afghanistan, and they're going on the offense. They're making a bunch of terrible arguments. Let me show you what Mitt Romney said, and then I'm going to respond.
There's a political slogan, end endless wars, but that doesn't translate into a serious policy decision. And the real policy is this. You can't, as one party, end a war. It takes two parties to end a war. The Taliban and the radical violent jihadists in the world, they haven't stopped fighting. They're going to continue to fight us. The war is not over. We're just no longer in a place where the war had its apex, where the Taliban was able to allow al-Qaeda to grow and to attack us on 9/11. We went to Afghanistan because we got attacked on 9/11 and lost thousands of American lives. Now America is more in danger. The reason we have a military is to protect America. And by the decision to pull our military out of Afghanistan puts us in greater danger. Don't forget, we went to Afghanistan to knock down al-Qaeda, but we stayed in Afghanistan to make sure they couldn't reconstitute to attack us again. So pulling out means we are less safe, and also recognize the war is not over. We're just in a weaker position. We don't have boots on the ground. We don't have eyes on the ground. When they say, look, we have over-the-horizon capacity, that's a fancy phrase. What does that mean? It means we're not there. The nearest American air base is, 1,000 miles away? I mean, I had eyes on my over the horizon on my teenagers, but that meant I had no idea what they were doing. Likewise, this idea that somehow we're still in control is not real, and America is in greater danger.
So I hear you saying that you think we're less safe for leaving Afghanistan than if we have stayed. Do you think that we are less safe now than we were before we went into Afghanistan 20 years ago?
Well, I think that's hard to measure, but we're certainly less safe than we were when we had a group of, let's say, 5,000 American service people in Afghanistan standing up as the backbone behind some 250,000 Afghan troops who were keeping at bay the Taliban and other terror groups. That made us a great deal safer. And by the way, we have thousands of troops, tens of thousands of troops in Germany, in South Korea, in Japan. Why are they there? They're there not as favors to those countries, but because we believe that keeps us and the world safer. And the idea that we would keep several thousand troops in Afghanistan as long as necessary to keep us more safe is, of course, the appropriate policy to take. But these political slogans come in the way. End endless wars. The war is not ended when only one party pulls out and the others are continuing to fight, and now fight with more aggression. Look, going forward, we're going to have to recognize we're in a much more dangerous position, and we're going to have to invest, I'm afraid, more resources to keep ourselves safe.
I've heard that argument before about the fact that the U.S. service members are stationed in Germany and Japan and in South Korea. But it's also true that they're not being killed by IEDs or by an insurgent group. I've talked to, veterans like everybody else are all over the map when it comes to this decision and this horrible week and this and that. But I've talked to some veterans, conservatives even, who say, I'm glad we're getting out. I don't want any more Gold Star families created.
Yeah, the reality is we're even have a greater reason to main troops in a place where there is hostility, because those people are going to bring their hostility to America and to Americans and to our friends, whether we like it or not. The idea that somehow we can pull out of a dangerous place where radical violent jihadists are organizing, that we can pull out of that and that's going to stop them, well, that's fantasy. They're going to continue in their effort to regroup and to come after America. Don't forget what they did on 9/11. The reason, again, we were in Afghanistan was to keep another 9/11 from happening. Now we pull out, and the Taliban is much stronger than they were before, in part because of all the armament we've given them. ISIS-K is now alive. The old ISIS that still is in Syria and Iraq, they're stronger. These forces of hate that consider America the great Satan, they're still out there. They're still fighting us. That war, unfortunately, goes on. And the idea that we pulled out of one of the places that was essential to push back against them is an idea that makes me far more concerned that had we retained a small footprint there to support the people on the front lines, the Afghan National Security Forces, that were doing a pretty darn good job.
The Afghan forces were doing a pretty darn good job, Mitt Romney says. Where have you been the last 3 weeks? Do you have no idea what happened in the country? Do you have no idea that we supposedly had 300,000 people who were fighting, and then they instantly dropped their guns and ran and went to Tajikistan? The so-called president, who's just a puppet president, took over $150 million and ran out the back door with it. $150 million in cash. The government imploded instantly. Now, yeah, there were 1,000 or 2,000 elite-level Afghan fighters who cared and were really trying to stand up and make a difference, but that ain't enough. They weren't doing a pretty darn good job. Maybe the 1,000 or 2,000 were, but the 300,000? Are you kidding me? And he's pretending like, oh yeah, that kept us more safe. I I don't know if he's just a moron or if he's a liar, but man, if he just doesn't understand that it was a fake military, he's dumber than I thought. So, I mean, I love this. He literally, his first thing he says is he attacks the idea of ending endless wars. Mitch McConnell said the exact same thing on a different Sunday show. This means there was a meeting of the GOP caucus where they all agreed, all right, so we're going to go out there and argue for endless war, correct? Correct? And they were like, yeah, let's do that. Let's argue for endless war. Because they're saying the same thing. They're all attacking the, quote, slogan, end endless war. He says that doesn't translate into a serious policy decision. What do you mean it doesn't translate? It is a serious policy proposal. It means let's get out. What, it's only serious when you're a neocon and an imperialist and a hawk and you occupy places illegally for decades? That's the only thing that counts as serious? What a joke, man. What a joke. He says, well, it takes two parties to end a war. Mitt, I got news for you. Al-Qaeda is obliterated in Afghanistan. There's fewer than 100 Al-Qaeda operatives left there, and that was as of a decade ago. So, and the Taliban, for anybody who knows geopolitics, they know this. The Taliban is a guerrilla army. They have nationalist ambitions. They don't have global ambitions. They're not a global jihadist network. Now, ISIS is, but the Taliban has been fighting ISIS for years now. And again, you would know this if you follow this stuff closely. So if the idea is, oh my God, we need to make sure we protect America. Well, mission accomplished, because the Taliban is in control in Afghanistan. They're the mortal enemies of ISIS, and they're going to fight each other. So there's not going to be some jihadist network that's growing in Afghanistan. That's utter nonsense. That's not true. And by the way, even with 9/11, the idea we got to go there to attack them. Most of the hijackers, 15 of the 19 hijackers, were from Saudi Arabia, our top ally who you want to arm and you want to fund. You want to give weapons to them as they build radical mosques all around the world. So it's all a joke. We ought to stay there to make sure that, Al-Qaeda can't reconstitute. There is no Al-Qaeda there anymore. It's ISIS and the Taliban and ISIS are going to be at each other's throats and they're going to be fighting each other. And by the way, there's a lot of threats in a lot of places. Should we invade Somalia now because they have Boko Haram is there? Is that what we should do? There's a lot of threats in a lot of different places and a lot of bad guys in a lot of different places. That's not an argument to stay there permanently. There's going to be a lot of sloppy, gross arguments like that you hear from various Republican politicians and various corporate Democrats. But just understand, at the end of the day, it comes down to ending endless wars being a bad idea in their opinion. That's what it is. So notice, he's criticizing the withdrawal, but he didn't have anything to say about the 20 years of grift and greed and corruption, where the military-industrial complex got phenomenally wealthy, and people in the military were like, there's no goal. What are we even doing here? This makes no sense. He had nothing to say about any of that. Nothing to say about us allying with warlords with child sex slaves. But now he's all outraged because we're pulling out. And because that's leading to some problems on the ground. The problems were going to happen whenever we got out. Whenever. But Mitt Romney probably knows this. And so his opinion is just never leave. Just stay there permanently. Well, guess what? If we stayed there permanently, we would have violated the peace agreement and the ceasefire, and the guns would be hot immediately. And so then you'd have way more U.S. soldiers dying and way more Afghan civilians dying. There was no status quo of just staying there forever, and everything would be okay, and there wouldn't be any more casualties or what have you. That wasn't an option. So they're leaning into it. They're leaning into their pro-war take, and it's annoying because it is possible that some of this stuff could land. The American people, 63%, want to get out of Afghanistan. They think that's the right policy. But Biden only has a 25% approval rating when he got out. So these guys are just exploiting, what they view as a weakness of Biden, and they're going hard in the paint. But God, they're the worst. They had nothing to say about Afghanistan during the 20-year war. But now that we're pulling out, oh my God, obviously we should stay in. Obviously we're trying to keep us safe, trying to keep America safe. I don't know if he really believes that, but if he does, he's so naive to not understand that this has to do with opium and the trillions of dollars in mineral wealth and Russia and China and defense contractors getting wealthy. To not understand that, again, I don't know if he is lying or if he's dumb, but either way, this commentary is beyond idiotic.